Hello and welcome with this illustrates. Today we will be painting a owl painting. I am using a reference from an account over on Instagram called Rice Teeth. Not sure if I pronounced that right, but you can find it also by Allisonlyonart, because this painting is part of a challenge that she created, and she links the reference photo in her post over on Instagram. By the time this video is live on YouTube, the challenge is over, but she already announced the new challenge, because this is a monthly challenge. So the new challenge for March is already up, and you can see the reference and the painting that she chose for March over on both her YouTube channel and her Instagram channel. I highly recommend checking her out, and I will be linking both her Instagram and her YouTube down below in the description. Now onto the painting. I wanted to make this painting more of a illustration than really a portrait of just the owl, and so I used the whole owl reference, and I also added a deer skull, some ferns and some mushrooms to make the painting less of a portrait feel, and I really want to explore more in making it a full illustration and not just copy one picture but combining multiple. So I really tried that in this one. Right now I'm painting in some of the mushrooms and the skull. I again used my Van Gogh watercolors. I used a lot of colors in this painting, so I'm not gonna list all of the colors that I used. For the mushrooms, I did went over multiple colors, because I first wanted to use carmine, and I wanted to make it like a really light red, and then build up the layers first before I later wanted to add in the spots with white gouache. But I didn't like the lightest tones of the carmine for the mushrooms, because it made a really pinkish tone. I, however, didn't film me changing the color of the mushrooms, so later on in this video you will see that I changed color, so that's why. For the ferns, I really just did it by hand, and I erased some of the lines that were in there from the sketch, because painting in the little leaves like I had sketched them out didn't really work. I used one green for this. It was olive green, and I tried to use it in different consistencies. Sometimes I try to put a bit more pigment in there, or go over some leaves multiple times, or I leave it a bit wetter so the leaves got a bit of texture in them, and it wasn't one flat color over the whole fern leaf in general. Here you can see me putting in all the little mini leaves inside the big leaf of the fern, and somehow I really enjoyed doing this, painting the fern. Right now I'm starting to build up the ground of the painting. For a really long time in the illustration I was really unsure about the ground and the background, because I did the ferns but I didn't really think through how I wanted to go and paint around them, because for some reason even this is cotton paper. If I glaze over the leaves just a little bit with a different color, even for the background with a light blue, it activated the green right away, and so the leaves did smudge a bit with doing this here and there, but I left that as it is because I liked that it wasn't that detailed, and that was also something that again I wasn't really trying with this painting. I didn't want it to become a painting that was super detailed. For the ground I was using the color sepia. On the camera it picked up a bit more like a burnt sienna, a bit more reddish, but in real life and also when it dried up it is really this muted brown color, and I really wanted that for this painting because I didn't want the background, and certainly not the ground where the skull was resting on, to be the focal point of the painting. So it had to be a color that was making sense, but also not a color that would distract too much of the final painting, because I didn't want, if it was on a wall or something, or you see it on Instagram, to be the first thing you see to be the ground. Again, I did have some trouble to get it even around the leaves, but I'm in the end happy with the result. But I really wish I could try out some more expensive materials, like the ferns, the arches paper and such for the ferns and everything, so that I can see if it really is the paper, or maybe it's that I have student grade watercolors and that's why the glazing doesn't work for me even though I'm using a cotton paper. So that's really something I'm trying to figure out. Right now you can see that I'm putting more detail in the skull. I was first adding some darker tones of the same brown mix I used for the initial layer on the skull, but later on I added some more variation in the color. I believe I used some Payne's Gray in there to make the shadows more of opposite color, and use that contrast between the colors to get nice shading in the skull. Here you can see me starting to add in details in a second. species of mushrooms I picked. I'm not sure what the exact name of this mushroom is, but I found a reference on Google and I tried to replicate the look of the mushroom. I didn't use an exact picture for these mushrooms. I did put in more detail than you see me do on camera. Once again, I didn't film the little details of that, and that is because I tend to be almost with my nose on the paper if I put in the most tiniest details of a painting, and the only thing you will see when I do that is my face or the back of my head or anything like that, so I left that bit out. But the only thing I did with more little details than you see me do now here is that I picked some colored pencils in a bit of a darker tone than you see me use with the watercolors, and I went over some of the edges from the skull and the mushrooms to define the edges a bit more. I think I could have done that with the watercolors, but I enjoy painting in different mediums in one drawing, so using colored pencil and gouache and watercolors in one painting I find more enjoyable than giving yourself the rule of only having the ability to use watercolors. I think the most important part about art is having fun, and that there shouldn't be any rules for yourself on a painting. Here you can see a little clip of me darkening one of the mushrooms. I did film the last one that you just saw and putting on spots on one of the mushrooms. I do apologize for the shaky camera work, but for this kind of angle I need to hold my phone while I am filming, and sometimes that gets a bit shaky. The next parts I put in is the moon behind the owl. I try to keep it really loose again and just wet the paper, not too wet, just that it's damp, and to drop in various kind of Payne's grey mixed with some ultramarine deep and let that dry in a really wet into wet wash. And later on the end of the painting, I added some white gouache on top of the moon to create some edges and some craters. For the background I chose to do a blue wash, also mixed with Payne's grey and ultramarine deep. I did a light wash first, and again I was struggling with doing the wash around the leaves. The leaves started to bleed really quickly and reactivate and bleed out into the blue, but I managed to make it work. After the first light wash, I started again from the top with a darker blue, and I darkened the top part, and I wanted to have it a gradient down to the leaves and to have the bottom part where the skull was in to be light, and then the ground was dark again. So I thought that would be a nice balance. For the first wash of the owl, I did a loose wash of a really pale grayish blue, once again using the Payne's grey, and in this wet wash I put in some shading with a brown that I mixed and also the Payne's grey, and I also added in this wet wash the first stripe layer of the owl I did. It was with brown, but I'm not sure which brown I used. I think I used sepia mixed with something, but I'm not sure again. By the time I'm doing this voiceover, it's been a few days that I finished the painting. I wanted to build up this pattern that he had on the feathers, because the feathers were white, you could see through them a bit, and you could see the spots on underlaying feathers, and I wanted to build that deepness in the feathers and in the overlaying patterns that there were in my painting. So I went in several times with this spot and stripes and all the shadows to create that deepness. Here you can see me work on a second layer of feathers on his head, and you can see that with the layers I built up on his head, the feathers get a kind of deepness in them, and that suggests that there is a texture of feathers and the overlaying spots without needing to paint in all the little details, and that was something that was important to me. You can also see in this shot the moon that I put some details in. With this part I kept painting out of frame, so you will see some shots where I was painting, but you can really see what I was doing. I'm sorry for that, but I was so focused on the painting that I just forgot to check if the camera was angled right all the time. On the body I'm doing also the same as on the head, with putting multiple layers of feathers in, that you get the same sort of structure. After this dried, the layer I'm working on right now, I put in a third layer. I personally really liked the end result of this technique that I tried here, with the layering of the spots to create this texture. And I also really liked that I brought depth in the painting with doing that, but also with doing the shadows of the owl a bit grey bluish, because that was the color of the background. That was not something that was in the reference photo, so I changed that on the owl. In the reference photo the owl was mostly white, with a little bit of grey here and there for the shadows, but not much. So that's really something that I added in the painting, but I'm really happy that I did. The face was for me the part where I struggled the most, and I tried to do the feather pattern the same there as I did in the rest of the painting, but in the end I added some white gouache over that to push back some of the colors, because some parts of the face became a bit too dark, and by adding in some white gouache that was not quite opaque but a bit more opaque than white watercolors would be, I added some light back in the face but kept the texture that I created. And I also did that on part of the wing that went into the body that you just saw, and for the feathers on his back that you're seeing right now, I added some more line work because those were more distinct than the feathers on the rest of its body. Again, I try to pick up more contrast and more depth on the bottom of his feathers by putting in paint gray and pushing back those feathers a bit more, because that was on the bottom, but I couldn't make it too dark because it was just one single layer of feathers and the light was showing through there also. And that was it for this painting. I really enjoyed this painting. It was a really fun challenge and I'm really happy with the end result. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I want to thank you very much for watching this video. And I also want to thank my patrons, Hans and Perosu, for supporting me over on Patreon. I will see you next time. Bye!